Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the Skaven in Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. As you may be aware, there is currently a major sale involving everything related to Sega. This of course includes the Warhammer games, and one of the questions I do get asked a lot is, which DLC should I get? That's what a lot of people want to know, because not everyone can afford to buy every DLC and not everyone wants to. So people want to know which DLCs are worth getting. Now I've made a whole video on the subject of the best value DLCs. I'm going to make a video on the essential DLCs, basically DLCs that you want to own if you're going to play certain races, because they do add very significant things for those races. But this brings me to the Skaven. The Skaven have free paid DLCs. They have Twisted in Twilight, which adds Frontal and Clean, and everything related to Hell Pit in Kislev over here. If I just toggle the file before. So you get this campaign, you get the customization through the lab that Front does have. However, while I certainly think Front's DLC is a really good one, and it's a good value DLC, I would highly recommend for people to get either of the previous DLCs, be it Ikit Claw or Snikch, before picking that one up. Because while the value of Twisted in Twilight is certainly much better than Shadow Blade and Prophet and Warlock, because you get access to the Wood Elves as a race for that DLC, I do consider it pretty essential to have either Shadow Blade or Prophet and Warlock, or maybe both of them, before you're going to play a Front campaign. This brings up, of course, the discussion of which of the DLCs involving Ikit Claw or Snikch are better. Which of these two DLCs is better? If I were to ask people in a poll, Ikit Claw wouldn't win by a landslide. The reason he wins by a landslide isn't necessarily because he's better. The reason he wins by a landslide is because he has nuclear weapons. You know, sometimes you just gotta move past the min-maxing and accept something that's awesome, and yes, having nuclear weapons on both the campaign map and the battlefield is quite important. Though I believe the Skaven, you do get access to the campaign map nukes regardless. Could be wrong on that, but the battle nukes are something exclusive to Ikit Claw's campaign. Well, unless you play the Changeling, in which case you're stealing his nukes, so maybe that's a way to do so. But still, let's take a look at both these DLCs, Prophet and Warlock and Shadow and Blade. What do these DLCs add for the Skaven? I want to mention that between the two DLCs, for the other races attached to them, be it the Lizardmen for Prophet and Warlock or the Dark Elves for Shadow Blade wins hands down. The master hero choice for the Dark Elves is quite a significant amount of power. And while the Lizardmen do gain some useful stuff, including Regiments of Renown, it's the main DLC involving Regiments of Renown for the Lizardmen. I think, like, if you're looking at it from an objective standpoint, Tenuin is not a great campaign, he's not a great lord. Malice Darkblade, while he's not the best Dark Elf campaign, he's certainly in a much better spot. And what the DLC adds, even if it's just a hero choice, like a single hero choice can make a significant difference in a campaign. So yeah, Shadow and Blade from that perspective wins hands down. But looking at it purely through the lens of what these DLCs add for the Skaven, here's what you get for Ikit Claw. Ikit Claw gets his own unique campaign with the Forbidden Workshop. Now, the benefit of the Forbidden Workshop is that you can upgrade a lot of units. You can upgrade Doomflayers, which are a unit exclusive to this DLC, Doom Whales, Weapon Team, so Rattling Gunners, Jezzails, which are, again, part of, like the Doomflayers, they're exclusive to this DLC, Warfire Throwers, Warp Grinders, Poison Wind Mortars, Globadiers, and Bombardiers. Should be noted, Warp Grinders and Poison Wind Mortars are part of Shadow and Blade. And of course, you do get some unique upgrades as you get the other upgrades over here for the, so you can get some unique units, some banners, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the nuclear weapons. And you also get Ikit Claw as a legendary lord. Now, Ikit Claw is certainly a powerful legendary lord. I would dare say that in Warhammer 2, he was the strongest Skaven legendary lord. by quite a bit. But that was in the context of Warhammer 2. Things have changed. The meta has changed. The balance has changed. The way gunpowder units, which Jezzails and Rattling Gunners use, has also changed. But here's what this DLC does add roster-wise for the Skaven. It is the DLC that I think adds the most, actually is the DLC that adds the most Regiments Renown for the Skaven, especially if you're counting the unique ones that only Ikit Claw can use. So you're going to get more value from Regiments Renown with Prophet and Warlock as opposed to Shadow and Blade. You also get the following things. You get the Warlock Master as a Lord choice. Now, the Warlock Master is a decent enough Lord. He does have a casualty replenishment benefit for his entire army, and then he has a choice between recruitment duration for Doomflayers and Doomwheels, recruit rank, or crucially an upkeep of minus 15% for Warlock Jezzails, Rattling Gunners, and Warpfire Throwers, or a construction benefit. Personally, I would always go with Weapons Engineer. If you're going to get Warlock Master, yeah, you do want to get at least some of these units. You might not make an entire stack in Warhammer 3 of these units, as you would in, say, Warhammer 2. Things have changed, but you certainly would get a good portion of your army to be these units, because that's the main reason you would want an army to be led by a Warlock Master, after all. By the way, I would also always use the Doomflayer for the purposes of auto-resolve, as opposed to the Doomwheel. He is a decent Lord, and actually he's quite annoying to deal with in the hands of the AI, because what the AI Skaven will do is spam Warp Lightning on your units, and unlike the AI cheats, which can easily dodge the spell, it's going to be a tad bit more difficult for you to do so. Like, if you've got the unit already moving, sure, but if your units are stationary, it's quite tricky. Now, here's the thing when you're considering it. So here's what you're getting. You're getting these two units, the Warlock Jezzails, the Rattling Gunners, and you're getting that Lord choice. Those are the things that matter the most. And also you're getting Doomflayers. Now, Doomflayers, I would say, don't really matter. Jezzails and Rattling Gunners do, but not quite in the same context. The problem with Rattling Gunners in a campaign is that while they certainly have a good amount of damage output, the way their damage works is reliant on them staying on station on a target, continuously shooting it, which is an issue given the many problems that do exist with gunpowder units in Warhammer 3. You can make it work, sure. You can make it work with a couple of units. You can, say, for instance, use Plague Monks as an example, for instance, to just be your tanks in a battle, or and just soak damage. Or you can use Warp Grinders. I personally prefer to use Warp Grinders to be the tanks to distract the enemy. Warp Grinders work well because there's few entities in the unit, so you're more likely to be able to engage in melee with them and be able to shoot than with many other units. So certainly not an exclusive situation over there. But that's what the DLC does add for Prophet and Warlock. Two units that are really important, one unit that isn't important, Regiments Renown, and a Lord choice. Also a campaign that many consider one of the greatest campaign of the Skaven, but I think there is certainly a difference of opinion between people who played a lot of Warhammer 2 and people who played a lot of Warhammer 3. I'm part of the latter. I've played a lot more Warhammer 3 than I've played Warhammer 2. Ikit Claw is not in the same state as he was in Warhammer 2. His campaign start, let's just talk about it. His campaign start is honestly quite awful to deal with in a lot of ways, because you start a war with Thestalia, but so does Mogr. And Mogr will beat you to the punch to defeating this army and raising the settlement, so you can't even really take this province before Mogr takes it down, at least if you're playing on Legendary very hard. On lower difficulties, you might be able to accomplish it, but I'll be blunt, I make these videos on accounting of the highest difficulty, not on the lower difficulty. The difference in difficulty affects how the AI is aggressive, how many resources they have, so Mogr will just accomplish more on higher difficulties in terms of wiping out the Thestalia. So that creates complications in your campaign and puts you in a slow start. You also have Belegar directly to your east, and if you think Belegar is not capable of wiping you out, you would be mistaken. But even if he's not capable of wiping you out, you don't really want to expand over here, The reason you don't want to expand here is because you would encounter the entirety of Alpha Lorem and Gelt, who also despise you. So you've got a bit of an issue in his campaign. Now let's take a look at Snikch. Then with regards to Shadow and the Blade, well, for the non-Skaven races, as I stated previously, the Dark Elves do get quite a bit with the Master Hero. It does make a far bigger difference than you might realize. But what do the Skaven get with the Shadow and Blade? Well, they first get the Master Assassin Lord. Now, Master Assassins are designed to be used in conjunction with Gata Runners or Night Runners because they have Shuriken Jutsu as a special skill that does give those units 10% missile strength. But here's the thing about Master Assassins. Even if you're not willing to use those kind of units, this is still, from my perspective, the best lore choice for the Skaven. Everything else is just fluff in comparison. The reason this is the best lore choice for the Skaven is while they're certainly not necessarily the best in individual battles, like Warlords will do better as a duelist, of course, Graciers in terms of magic, Warlock Masters also in terms of magic, when you're considering that. But here's the thing about Master Assassins. Skaven, all Skaven armies have stock stats. This gives you a chance of ambushing an enemy army when you attack. So as opposed to having to set up a proper ambush, you can just attack. You do still have ambush stance, but the benefit here is that whenever you're attacking, you should always be looking to attack. These you with Skaven Lords, you have a chance of ambushing Lords. Now, of ambushing enemy armies. Now, here's the real benefit of Master Assassins. They get the 15% ambush success chance in their army. That is what makes them the best Skaven lore choice. Because while their combat ability may not necessarily be the best, especially if you're not using Night Runners and Gata Runners for the concealment bombs and for the Shuriken Jutsu, the fact that you increase your chance and nullify that minus 15% ambush success chance that stock stance has, because it is obviously very powerful, so the way they balance it is like you have a lesser chance of ambushing an enemy. The fact you can nullify that does give these guys a fair amount of power. They're not the best in battle. Sure, they don't have the best durability. They can do a good amount of damage, especially in melee. They do have deadly onslaught, and they can actually survive decently well with slippery, but that's the main benefit of Master Assassins. In terms of heroes, they get Ashen Sorcerers with this DLC. Now, Ashen Sorcerers aren't the best hero choice for this game, and they're more of a support hero. That's how that works. It can help you out to have Ashen Sorcerers in an army, but to be quite honest with you, I would personally prefer in a Skaven army, if I'm choosing to go with any particular hero, I would probably go much prefer to have Plague Priests. Now, the thing about Plague Priests is that they do share the hero capacity with Ashen Sorcerers. And to be fair, to be quite frank about it, you can have a significant number of Plague Priests and you can have a significant number of Ashen Sorcerers. So you can do a combination of both in your campaign if you so desire. Should be pointed out that Snikch has a much better campaign overall than Ikit Claw, or at least a much better start. While he may not have nuclear weapons, he does have his own sneaky ability, like plunging into anarchy, which removes a faction leader, basically removes that faction for a player and makes them rebels. So there's a great deal of power, like destroying a Black Ark at sea, for instance, or any army at sea. There is a good amount of power that Snikch does have. He does have his own downsides, of course. The recruitment cost for non-Ashen units is significantly increased until you can do a good amount of clan contracts, and even then, you're probably not going to get it for all of these units, but it doesn't necessarily matter as much. In terms of the units, you get these free units that each of them do have their own roles. You do have Ashen Triads. They do have concealment bombs. They do have Vanguard deployment. And what's important with these guys, when you're looking at them. While they may not be as good in a straight up fight as quite a few other units, they do have the Weeping Blade, which does reduce enemy armor by 50%. These guys can certainly hold their own in a fight, far more so than you might think, and they do have that 30% physical resistance. Armor is low, so they won't do great in Out-Resolve, but they'll do quite decently in battle. Then you have Warp Grinders. Warp Grinders are quite useful because they have the seismic snare ability, so it will prevent enemies from moving. They do have the Warp Quake ability, which can do damage to enemy in combat. They have Siege Attacker, so an army with Warp Grinders, and keep in mind this is a tier 2 unit that you can recruit over here from any weapons dump. They have Wall Breaker. So any army with these guys in them can instantly attack a provincial capital, which is very useful to have. And quite crucially, they can break down walls. Now, the ability of breaking down walls is far more important than you might think, because one of the problems that you encounter in sieges is either you have artillery to break down walls, but obviously it costs ammunition to do so. Either you have artillery to break down walls in order to open pathways so you have more flexibility in battles, because what the AI will try and do is torpedo you at the gates if you let them. So if you're only attacking through a gate or two, it's very easy to get bogged down, piled up, and annihilated. Well, that's what Warp Grinders do. They give you the flexibility to attack wherever the hell you want in a siege. The most important unit, however, for the DLC are the Poison Wind Mortars. Skaven do have good artillery, regardless of DLC or not, but Poison Wind Mortars are on a different level. There are two things I fear when fighting Snikch. One is Snikch himself, because he can annihilate my entire army if I'm not careful. I still have flashbacks as playing as Emmerich against him in Warhammer 2. The second thing is his starting unit of Poison Wind Mortars. If I can auto-resolve a battle against Snikch, I would rather take that. These guys, the level of damage they do is ridiculous. Like, they'll do, I don't know, a quarter of the HP of an entire unit in a single explosion. And while they don't have the best range, they do outrange any ranged unit that you do have. You can only take these guys either by using cavalry against them, or by taking the damage, advancing against the enemy. And keep in mind, Snikch is going to have a lot of clan rats and Skaven slaves to drown you in before you can get in range. Like, whenever I fight a manual battle against Snikch, I'll sacrifice a lot just to take down this one unit. And also sacrifice a lot to deal with Snikch himself. Let's say I'm playing a campaign as Cafe and in Cafe. Then those are the kinds of sacrifices you need to make to deal with this bastard. And this unit is quite powerful. I would dare say that this unit alone, let alone the benefit that the Warp Grinders give you, this unit alone is far above any benefit you get in a campaign from Jezzails or Rattling Gunners. There is a use for Rattling Gunners and Jezzails. They are not the absurdity in terms of damage potential that the Poison Wind Mortars are. So that's my perspective on that. I think if you have to choose between these DLCs, I would much rather go for Shadow and Blade as opposed to Prophet and Warlock. I do think that Prophet and Warlock is an important DLC to own for a Skaven, and ideally you own both of them. When it comes to Skaven in general, actually, like, Skaven are a good race, and their DLCs, all of them, are good in their own way. Like, all of the Skaven DLCs are high-value DLCs. But if you have limited money and you want to pick one, and just one, I would I would recommend Shadow and Blade far more strongly than Prophet and Warlock. It has a better campaign, it has a really good amount of power that will benefit all the Skaven campaigns. This is the crucial thing that I need to mention. Ikit Claw will benefit a lot, obviously, from the units in his DLC. But other campaigns, not quite as much, I would argue. Whereas every Skaven campaign will benefit from Master Assassins, will benefit from Warp Grinders, will benefit from Poison Wind Mortars. That is where I stand on that subject. Let me know what you guys think. I know this is probably one of those videos where a significant part of the community will disagree with me on, but that But from my perspective, when I'm looking at what these two DLCs have to offer, the better one, the better value, the more essential one is Shadowblade, as opposed to Prophet and Warlock. Kostin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.